just want to point out that we just started this interview with you designing the light of this shot because...
Hey, no, don't blame me for it.
No. I just want to say that my mouth was shut. I said nothing, and I would never be as disrespectful to make any presumptions.
Now you have an idea of what I do, how quickly we have to work, and the tools we have at hand, you know? I know what we do.
100%. Sir, I'm sure you hear this from everyone. I'm obviously a ridiculous fan of your work. But I'm sure it must be like, though, a love fest when people walk in to talk to you. I don't think people say anything other than the Wayne's World thing.
I don't know. I don't know where it's all coming from, really. And sometimes I sort of realise I've been doing it quite a while, I suppose. But it's very nice.
I think I speak for all the wannabe DPs. I'm not a wannabe DP, but I want to represent them for 1 second. Can you please give all the secrets in a span of 8 minutes?
Yeah, I think there are no secrets, are there really? No, go and ask a specific question. I mean, all the secrets?
Well, I'm making a joke. I'll jump into a real serious question. How has the new modern technology, digital cameras, and what cameras can now do with technology in the editing room, how has that shaped the way you work, if at all?
I sleep at night because I don't have to wait till the lab report. But I mean, the last film I shot with the Coen brothers, we did it on film. And I was actually surprised how easily I slipped back in and how similar the process was. I haven't really changed much. I mean, I still use a meter. I still light through the camera. An advantage is now I have a DIT on set with a calibrated monitor. So I can see exactly what the image is rather than guessing, but I was pretty good at guessing really by the time digital came along. But more importantly, I think because you have that monitor on the set, it's a better relationship with the director. You know, a number of cinematographers have said, the mystery's gone, because everybody can see what I'm doing on set. Well, I think that's a really good thing myself. I kind of like that. I like it when I can say to Angelique Jolie, who I had only worked with that for the first time on Unbroken, is I could say, I really like to shoot this in silhouette, or I think this plays in this long shot, or she could see exactly what I was talking about without any miscommunication.
How I'm curious how you discover the way you'd like to frame things, and how much you've relied in your career over thinking about it in advance with storyboards and breaking it all down, and how much is improvised in the moment once you're on set, seeing the light, seeing what you're working with.
Well, I mean, it depends. I mean, some films you don't storyboard, like something like, well, we're working with Sam Mendes, right? For instance, on Jarhead or Skyfall. We didn't storyboard that much. We storyboard the opening sequence of Skyfall, but mainly not. And mainly it was a case of working with the actors and then figuring out the scene as we blocked it with the actors. On the other side of it, working with Joel and Ethan, the whole film storyboarded. But on the day, that actual framing is very much something that you work on the day. It's not. It's much more an instinctive, reactional thing to what's in front of you.
What is when you look at your illustrious resume? I'm curious. What was maybe one of the more complicated days on set in terms of something that just took you a very long time to get right in some of your recent films, or I'm just curious, like how maybe some of the challenges that you really were tough to overcome.
Well, the thing is, whether it was like the border crossing in Sicario, for instance, or it's like that whole night sequence in No Country for Old Men, where ends up Moss is chased by the dog down the river. I mean, there's a whole sequence of it. Of the light coming starts at night, and the whole sequence ends up with dawn. He's sitting on a cliff top by the river. I mean, those sort of challenges. You know how much time you got to shoot it. Your hopes for the scene. You have it in your head what you really want it to look like, and it never does because you never got the time to do it. But you have to spend the time in prep. You have to think it out. You have to work it out technically. It becomes like you write a battle plan. I mean, the sequence I'm talking about in No Country, I spent mornings and nights going down, looking at locations and figuring exactly what shot I wanted to do on what time of day, and then I fitted a whole chart of these shots as to when I wanted them shot, because some of them were done with a second unit and we were doing something else, and some of them were done at the beginning of a day and an end of a day. So it's a whole jigsaw puzzle. And the same thing working with Denny on the border crossing and the shootout. I mean, we didn't have that many days to shoot that whole sequence, so you really have to plan it very carefully, and you plan the angles. I mean, that whole thing was storyboarded, although, I mean, we changed things on the day, but you have a basic plan of action. Every day you're going to start, the sun comes up here, we're going to start with these shots, and at midday, well, we can do these in the car, and then as the sun goes down, well, we can shoot this way. So every day we were doing that kind of, dance around the set,
I think a lot of people definitely do not work that way, and that's probably one of the
you
reasons.
probably don't, but I don't see how you can make the most out of the situation if you don't really prepare it somewhere in your head.
Sure.
That,
No, of course. I've had this conversation with other people. Prior planning prevents poor performance.
Yeah. I mean, you can always throw it away. I mean, all the planning in the world, you throw it away. And sometimes we do, even with Joel and Ethan. Like sometimes we'll get in and think, oh, well, let's play all this in a wide shot, Or we shoot a shot, and I'll say, are we going to go in for coverage? And they'll say, no, I don't think we need coverage. I think it works like this. And I said, well, it's not storyboarded, it's coverage. And they go, yeah, but we don't need it, And that's the strength of Joel and Ethan, and of Denny, actually, because he can see what works in a shot. He doesn't shoot an enormous amount of coverage just for the sake of it. And with the idea of making it in the cutting room, he can see in his head what.
Well, he says he prides himself on being an editor. He says if he wouldn't be a director, he'd be an editor.
Yeah, very much. He can see what works and what he needs to make something work, and he can see where he needs a transition and where he's got to concentrate on something to help a transition.
In Sicario, there is a thermal imaging shot. There's a great sequence involving that stuff. But specifically about that scene, and also sort of addressing the fact that this movie was not made for a crazy budget. It was made for like 30-something million, which is a lot of people aren't going to believe that number when they see it on screen because it looks so much bigger. Can you talk about working with a tight budget and also trying with that thermal imaging sequence?
Well, that's the thing. Again, I go back to prep. You're on a tight budget. You've got to make it all count. You can't shoot a load of shots and a load of scenes that aren't going to be in the film. So, Denny and I spent a lot of time going through the script and then talking about different sequences as to what the bare bones of it was, what we really needed and what was superfluous to and needs. And then that the whole journey into the tunnel. I mean, obviously, the conundrum with that was, okay, it's night. We need to see what's going on, but if we light it like, it's moonlight or something, that doesn't make sense, because why have they got thermal imaging, or why have they got night vision if it's too dark to see? So we figured that we would play everything really from their perspective. So the reason the thermal imaging came up was the idea of having two different looks so that you could cut between them and you wouldn't get confused about which characters were looking, whose point of view you were in. So the thermal imaging was always Alejandro's viewpoint. And I don't think I'd shot thermal imaging before. So we got this high-end camera from FLIR, a company that specialise in thermal imaging, and it is a sort of camera they use for scientific purposes. And we got it down and shot a load of experiments with it to see what we could do with it. And one was the idea of, I don't know how it came up, with the idea of following these footprints. And then, anyway, we ended up, it was a great idea. You don't quite see it in the final shot, but the prop man heated his boots up and he walked down the stairs on the set, and we followed it with a thermal imaging camera. What was really nice, if you dwelt on it a bit longer, the footprints would disappear as the heat dissipated, but you don't see that in the film. So anyway, but you know, we did a lot of prep with it, that was the thing, and worked out exactly what we wanted with it, because we only had it for like a day.
That's crazy. I'm about to run out of time with you, so I have to ask you, as a huge fan of your work, you have not really delved into sci-fi, and I'm very curious. Denny mentioned that it took about 2 minutes to convince you to do it.
Well, yeah.
For the sequel, Blade Runner.
Yeah, I've always wanted to do a science fiction film, but the only things I've been asked to do, and probably most of what's out there really, I consider as being science fantasy and not really science fiction. And obviously the original Blade Runner is such a, you know, iconic movie, isn't it? And such a, and so, you know, I mean, to work with Denis again, but also on that, I mean, God, yeah, what an opportunity, you know.
Yeah, the scope and scale. But I have to ask you, and I know I have to go. The original Blade Runner is one of the things that I always. I mean, I love the movie so much, and it's just filled with this beautiful atmosphere, and and I think half the movie is just atmosphere of getting into that world. And I'm just curious if that's something that you're already thinking about. He mentioned you're going to be filming next summer. Are you already percolating in your brain, you know, ideas, or you know what I mean? Because it's a huge movie to so many people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think I'm holding off till Denny and I get together and we start talking about it, and with a production designer as well, and really start figuring it out. I mean, I think the look of the film is an organic process. It's not something you kind of read a script and then just something comes in your head, I think. And although, you know, I think the original film is wonderful, this is not the original film. This, you know, is not going to bear that much. Visually, it doesn't have to be anything like the original. It has to stand by itself, and it's a particular script and a particular story. So, I'm you know, I think it's. I mean, the original was wonderfully shot, but to me, the most powerful thing about the original film is the death of what's the actor's name?
Rutger Hauer.
Rutger Hauer's death in the rain with the white pigeon, and then you watch the documentary about the making of it and realise that was all something that was kind of created on the day, and the dialogue was rewritten. And to me, that is what the film is about. That moment, you know. This guy struggling with his own being and dying. I just, you know, it's wonderful. If we can get a little bit of that, it would be great.
Yes, I'm going to leave it there and say congratulations on why I get to talk to you today. And as a huge fan of your work, and for speaking all of fandom, I'm very excited to see what you do in a big sci-fi project.
Terrifying, isn't it, really?
It's definitely not an easy. This is not an easy one. Let me hit.